So today we are talking about market failure in the labor market. It's advanced level economics. Chapter 18 is talking about market failure in the labor market. Now, first of all, what is labor? Of course, we know that labor is any effort rendered during the production of goods and services, and the reward for labor is wages and salaries. So here we are talking. But by the end of this lesson, we should be able to know what is the differences between occupational mobility of labor and geographical mobility of labor. But before we get to know that, we have to look at the meaning of mobility of labor. Of course, mobility of labor is the ability for labor to switch from one occupation to another or from one geographical region to another. It's the ability for labor to move from one occupation to another or from one geographical region to another. I say in a perfect labor market, there are no barriers to the supply of labor to any region or any occupation. Workers can freely move from one job to another or from different regions to different regions. So it means there is occupational mobility of labor and there is geographical mobility of labor. But sometimes in a normal market, this geographical mobility of labor or occupational mobility of labor, they have barriers which are called immobility. For example, we can say geographical immobility of labor. What does it mean? You see, this is when workers find it difficult to move from one area or one region or one country to another in search for jobs. So if there are available jobs in different regions and workers are finding it difficult to get access to those jobs, it is called geographical immobility of labor. Now, what can cause geographical immobility of labor? The first causes of geographical mobility of labor is inadequate information about the availability of labor of jobs in different regions. For example, if someone is in New York, it will be difficult for that person to know that there are jobs in New Jersey or there are jobs in California. So the information is limited. So even if they could get jobs in New York, they might not wish to leave friends and family. So that is another point. The ability for workers to leave their friends and families, we call it family attachment in economics. When most workers have family attachment, it will be difficult for them to move from one geographical region to another in search for job because they may not want to lose the attachments that exist between them and their loved ones in their families. Another point they were also talking about factors that can make labor not to move from one part to another is housing. They say housing can also be a major cause of geographical immobility. Workers who rent their accommodation may not be able to find a new house at a particular area. So if you are already settled in a particular region, it's difficult for you to move to another region because from there you need to rent a house, you need to put your things in order. So the inability for you to get these housing facilities or accommodation in different regions may be another reasons why workers may find it difficult not to move from one geographical region to another in search for jobs. Then they said it can also be difficult to move from one geographical region to another because of legal restriction. You have to follow procedures for documentations. You have to follow procedures on how to move from one geographical region to another. For example, if you are leaving one country to another country, you need the process of visas, you need a work permit. So all these legal restrictions can make it difficult for workers to move from one place to another. And also language barriers and cultural differences can also be another barrier to geographical mobility of labor. So we have talked about inadequate information about available jobs. We have talked about housing problems, accommodation. We have talked about family attachment. We have talked about legal restrictions, which have spoken. We have also spoken about language barriers and cultural differences. So these factors can cause geographical immobility of labor. It may make workers not to move from one place to another. Then what are the consequences if workers cannot move, if it is difficult for laborers or workers to move from one country to another? What can be the consequences? They said the first consequences is that firms may not be able to expand or fulfill contract as they plan to do because there will be job vacancies, but there will not be any available people or workers to fill those vacancies. Then, secondly, because of inability for workers to move from one country to another, in the set geographical region where these jobs are available, there will be shortage in the demand, in the supply for labor. There's supply for labor, there is demand for labor. Demand for labor is the quantity or the number of workers that companies are ready to employ, while supply for labor is the number of hours that workers are ready to work. So if it is difficult for workers to migrate to another country where these job opportunities are, it means there will be shortage in the supply for labor in that country. And if there is shortage in the supply for labor in that country, there will be an increase in wage rate because there is shortage in labor. So the available laborers will demand for higher wages for companies in that country. Also, it will increase in the differences between the prices between the rent in different regions. For example, if there is a possibility for workers, or if workers cannot move from one geographical region to another, it means there will be enough houses in the areas where there is jobs, but there will not be available to fill those houses. So it means the cost of maybe renting a single house will be high because the few houses that are available may only be for the available workers, and those who are the owners of those houses may increase the rent. They said in regions where workers are unable to enter, there will be unemployment. There will be a high unemployment rate in areas where there are enough workers, and there will be a shortage or scarcity of workers in areas where there are jobs. So if workers cannot move from one region to another, the region that holds workers without available jobs will have high unemployment rate because there will be many people who are ready to work but they cannot find work. So it is called in unemployment structural unemployment, when there is availability of workers but it doesn't match with the productive capacity of that region. They say employment as a result of industry closing in an area where they were previously concentrated is called structural unemployment. It means people were working before, but because the company or that organization closed, people lose their jobs. So this can also be another consequences. They said there will also be an impact on individuals and families, as the standard of living will be lower in areas where there is high unemployment, and also it will affect the businesses in that area because if there is high unemployment rate, it means there will be fall in the demand for goods and services. If there's a fall in demand for goods and services in certain areas, it means businesses may not succeed in that area. Then they said it will also reduce the standard of living in areas where there is high unemployment rate. Why? Because when people work, they use the disposable income to provide basic necessities to their families. So if they don't get those, if they lose their jobs or if they don't get those jobs, it's difficult for them to maintain a particular standard of living. So those are the consequences of geographical immobility of labor. Then we'll go to the next. What is occupational mobility of labor? Like we have said, occupational mobility of labor is the ability for workers to freely leave one job to another. For example, a teacher leaving the teaching field to become a doctor. So it is free. Anybody can move from one occupation to another. But what are the barriers to occupational mobility of labor? In short term, the first, it is very difficult for workers to transfer from one occupation to another, and in many cases, it's impossible. Why? Because most workers lack natural talent. Most people lack natural talent. It will mean that, for example, some workers will never be capable of training to be surgeons or have the skill to become an artist. So it's difficult for workers who don't have natural talent, because for you to switch from one job to another, it means you need to be trained or you need to follow the guidelines of that job. So if you don't have natural talent, it will be easier, it will be difficult for you to adapt as a worker to the new job. Then they said it also takes time and money because it will require more education on that particular occupation which you are entering. For example, if you are leaving the teaching field to become a medical doctor, you will need enough money and enough time to train to become a medical doctor. So it can be very difficult at that time. Then the next, they say lack of knowledge of education and training opportunities may also be the cause of some people not moving from one occupation to another. Yes, for example, if there was an opportunity for you to undertake vocational training while you were doing your other job and you didn't take it, it's difficult for you to meet up with that job. For example, a teacher can be taking extra lessons for maybe to become a doctor, maybe teach during the day and then go during in the night and take lessons as a medical doctor, it will be easier for you to switch. But without this adequate education on that sector, it will be difficult for you to switch. Then they said, in the longer term, it becomes more possible, although the cost for the individual may vary and may make it difficult to change occupation. So the cost of taking new jobs may be very, very high. So we have spoken about lack of education, we have spoken about longer times, we have spoken about natural talents, and we have also spoke about the ability for you to take time and be trained on the new job. So those factors will cause occupational mobility of labor. Then what are the consequences of occupational mobility of labor? Say many of the consequences of occupational mobility of labor is similar to those of geographical mobility of labor. Firms will not be able to expand or fulfill contracts as they plan due to unfilled job vacancies. There will be lower output in the economy than would be expected based on the economic resources available to the economy. This results in a waste of resources and market failures. Yes, but if workers are unable to occupy certain vacancies in certain areas, it may lead to waste of resources and market failure. And if this happens, it will lead to unemployment. Unemployment rate in is much higher in some occupation than others. People who lose their jobs in particular industries and are structurally unemployed may not have the skills and qualification required for the job. So vacancies, they will often remain unemployed for long periods of time unless they retain or take a job that requires a lower level of skills than they are capable of. So if, for example, if teachers become unemployed because their school decided to close down, it will be difficult for them to easily integrate to another profession, except they will be willing to take skills or jobs that have lower skills than the expected, which they can easily get. But it will be difficult for them to find jobs that will meet the standard of teaching. So that's the first. They said waste of economic resources as workers who are willing to be able to work remain unemployed or unemployed in jobs where their skills are not fully used. Potential output is lost from the economy. So the wage rate may also be distorted because occupation where there are skill shortage may have higher wages, and occupation where there is extra or more supply for labor may have lower wages. So that is it. There will be surplus and there will be shortage. And in the areas where there is shortage, the wage rate will increase. In areas where there is surplus, the wage rate will reduce. That is another consequence of occupational mobility of labor. So that is the end of the lesson. So we spoke about two types of, we talk about mobility of labor, we spoke about labor itself, we spoke about the supply and demand for labor, we spoke about occupational mobility of labor and geographical mobility of labor, we spoke about the inability or the barriers of geographical mobility of labor, we also spoke about the barriers of occupational mobility of labor as well as their consequences. So this is the end of the lesson.